You have been told that you must struggle, fight, and achieve to be at peace. I tell you, this is the greatest lie you have ever believed. The more you try to quiet your mind, the louder it becomes. Zen is not a method to control your thoughts. It is a sudden, sharp shock that wakes you up from the dream of thinking entirely. Listen closely, because this one trick will destroy your illusions forever. Hello, my beloved friends. It is beautiful to see you here, gathered in this quiet space, away from the noise, away from the constant rush of the marketplace. You have come here with a deep thirst, a longing to find a secret, a trick, a hidden pathway to instantly quiet that restless mind of yours. You are tired of the inner chatter, the endless monologues, the anxiety that keeps you awake when the rest of the world is fast asleep. You want to know how to force that storm inside your head to become a serene lake. But let me tell you from the very beginning, Zen is not about forcing anything. Zen is an entirely different dimension. It does not give you a weapon to fight your mind. It gives you the eyes to see through it. Look at your life. You are constantly running, constantly striving, continuously evaluating everything around you and within you. You look at a thought and you immediately say, "This is good," or you look at another thought and you get frightened and say, "This is bad, this is evil, I must destroy it." This very division, this constant inner warfare, is exactly what keeps your mind noisy. The mind feeds on conflict. The moment you start fighting your thoughts, you are giving them your energy. You are making them important. You are turning them into a reality that demands your full attention. If you feel a deep connection to these words unfolding right now, if you feel this flame of awareness warming your inner being, take a moment to look below. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and perhaps share your own reflections in the comment section. Your active presence here is a beautiful gift, and if you wish to help this light travel to more searching souls across the world, consider clicking the join button to become an official part of our digital commune, or expressing your gratitude through a super thanks, or even diving deeper into our collective journey by exploring our ebooks. It is not a business, it is simply a natural way for our hearts to beat as one, allowing this ancient wisdom to echo into the corners of a weary world. To understand the secret of a quiet mind, we must look into a beautiful Zen story. Listen to it very carefully. Let it sink deep into your heart, down into the deepest core of your consciousness. One evening, as the Zen master Shichiri Kojun was reciting sutras, a thief with a sharp sword entered his room. The thief demanded either Shichiri's money or his life. Shichiri looked at him without a single ripple of fear in his eyes. He did not get up. He did not scream for help. He simply told the thief, "Do not disturb me. You can find the money in that drawer." And then he resumed his recitation of the sutras. Think about it. No condemnation, no judgment whatsoever. It was as if a gentle summer breeze had entered the room, not a dangerous thief with a naked sword. There was not even a slight change in the master's eyes. A simple, total acceptance of the moment. Shichiri recognized that this is the way this man is, and who knows, this is the way he has to be in this moment. Why should he judge? If the man can be kind enough not to disturb the recitation of the holy sutras, that is more than enough to expect. A little while afterwards, Shichiri stopped his recitation and called out to the leaving intruder, "Don't take it all. I need some money to pay my taxes with tomorrow." The intruder, completely bewildered by this absolute lack of resistance, gathered up most of the money and started to leave the house. But just as he reached the door, Shichiri added one more thing. Thank a person when you receive a gift. The man, utterly overawed, thanked the master and made off into the dark night. See the immense compassion of Shichiri. He does not even call it a theft. He transforms the entire ugly event into a beautiful act of giving. He says, "Thank a person when you receive a gift." He did not want this poor man to carry the heavy burden of guilt back home. He knew that if the man felt he was stealing from a poor, defenseless monk, he would not be able to sleep. He would spend his nights tossing and turning, repenting, feeling miserable. Zen does not want to create guilt in any way. Traditional religions are built entirely on the foundation of guilt, but Zen is a religion without guilt. Shichiri protected the thief from his own future guilt by declaring it a gift. A few days afterwards, the fellow was caught by the authorities and confessed, among many other crimes, the offense he had committed against Shichiri. When Shichiri was called into the court to stand as a witness against this man, the master looked at the judge and said, "This man is no thief, at least as far as I am concerned. I gave him the money, and he thanked me for it. The accounts are completely closed between us. He does not owe me anything. The story does not end there." After the man had finished his prison term for his other crimes, he did not return to his old life of robbery. He went straight back to Shichiri's hut, fell at his feet, and became his devoted disciple. What else can you do with a man like Shichiri? You are bound to become a disciple. He converted a hardened criminal into a sannyasin without preaching a single sermon, without giving him a lecture on morality, without threatening him with the fires of hell. This is the ultimate alchemy of a master. He never misses an opportunity to show the path. Even if a thief stumbles into his room by accident, he will return as a transformed soul. Jesus said a tremendously beautiful thing, "Judge ye not." This was perfect Zen. Had he stopped right there, those 3 simple words would have transformed the entire character of Western consciousness. But perhaps because he was talking to a specific group of people, because he had to speak in a traditional Jewish way, he added a conditional clause, so that ye are not judged. The moment that addition was made, the pure flavor of Zen disappeared. It was immediately destroyed. It became a bargain, a business-like transaction. Do not judge others out of fear, so that God will not judge you on the last day. But how can you drop judgment out of fear or greed? Fear and greed can never make you value-free. They keep you utterly self-centered, deeply egoistic. The radical revolution of the statement was crucified by the second clause. Zen stops exactly at the beginning. Judge ye not. Zen says, all is as it is. Nothing is good. Nothing is bad. Things are simply the way they are. Some trees are tall and some trees are small. Somebody is behaving morally and somebody else has gone out to steal. That is the way existence is functioning. This revolutionary flavor of Zen will make you afraid at first. It will frighten you because it strips away all your comfortable moral blankets. Zen has no commandments. It never says do this or don't do that. It has no shoulds and no should nots. It refuses to create that rigid prison of the ought. Modern psychoanalysis is now beginning to realize that perfectionism is a subtle kind of neurosis. And Zen is the only religion in human history that is completely non-neurotic. It accepts reality so totally that it will not even label a thief as a thief or a murderer as a murderer. It remains unconditionally value-free. All other traditional religions are deep down based on fear and greed. They bribe you with the glittering rewards of a paradise, and they scare you out of your wits with the nightmarish tortures of a hell. They create God-fearing people. But how can fear ever be religious? Fear is the very opposite of religiousness. Only fearlessness can lead you into the divine. But if you carry rigid ideas of good and bad, you can never be fearless. Your morality makes you feel continuously guilty. It turns you into a psychological cripple. It paralyzes your capacity to live. Look at the so-called religious people. They are continuously trembling inside, anxious about whether they are going to make it to heaven or whether they will be cast down into eternal damnation. Even when Jesus was taking his final leave from his closest disciples, just the night before his crucifixion. What were the disciples worried about? They were arguing among themselves about what their respective places would be in heaven. They conceded that Jesus would sit on the right hand of God, but they wanted to know who would be next in line. They were not concerned that their beloved Master was going to be tortured and killed the next day. They were obsessed with their own egoistic interests. The same greed you have for money in the marketplace simply becomes transformed into a greed for God. In the world, money is your God. In your religion, God becomes your money. That is the only difference. You are afraid of the police and the state court, so you transport that same fear onto the Supreme Court of God and the last day of judgment. Even Christian saints, in their final moments on earth, have been observed trembling with deep anxiety, unsure of their standing with the Almighty. Zen completely destroys this sick psychology from the very root. It has no condemnation for anything whatsoever. It only offers clear understanding. It says, try to see things exactly as they are, without imposing an ideal, without saying how a human being should be. The very moment you say how a person should be, you become completely blind to the reality of what he actually is. The should becomes a heavy, opaque barrier between you and the real. You hold up a perfectionist ideal, and because every human being naturally falls below it, everyone ends up condemned. The egoistic people who manage to force themselves into these artificial ideals, at least on the surface, become your great saints. But if you look deeply into their eyes, you will find only one distinct flavor, a holier-than-thou attitude. They believe they are the chosen few, authorized to condemn you and forced to transform you. Zen is not interested in transforming anybody, and yet it is the greatest transforming force in existence. That is the ultimate paradox. It is not concerned with how you should be. It is only passionately concerned with what you are. It looks into your reality with loving, caring, non-judgmental eyes. And out of that deep understanding, a natural transformation happens on its own accord. You don't have to force it. It simply blossoms like a flower in the spring. Valuation is the fundamental disease of the human mind. The moment you say a man is good, you have stopped looking at him. You have labeled him, pigeonholed him, categorized him. You have written a title on his forehead, and now you will behave according to your own label, not with the living reality of the man himself. But a living person is a river, a constant flux. In the morning he may be good, by the evening he may turn bad, and by the night he may become beautifully good again. He is alive. You can only label a person with absolute certainty when he is dead and lying in his grave. You can write your final judgment on his tombstone, because now he cannot change. Now the river has stopped flowing. But as long as a person is breathing, everything remains possible. When you label someone, you create a destructive pattern. First, you force him to behave according to your label because he feels an unconscious obligation to prove you right. If a father continuously tells his child that he is a problem, the child's unconscious mind begins to reason that he must create problems to keep his father from being wrong. Let me tell you a small story about 3 women who were bragging about their young children. The first woman said, "My child is only 5 years old, but he writes such beautiful poetry that even accomplished poets feel ashamed before him." The second woman said, "That is nothing. My child is only 4, and he paints ultra-modern, impressionist paintings. He doesn't even use a brush. He simply throws the paint on the canvas with his bare hands, and something magnificent, out of the blue, arises. Even Picasso would not be able to make head or tail of it. It is so original." The third woman smiled and said, "Both of your children are far behind. My child is only 3 years old, and he already goes to the psychoanalyst all by himself." If you label people, you will manage to destroy them. Never label anyone as a sinner or a saint. People don't have individual, original ideas. They think collectively. You hear a rumor that someone is bad. You accept it blindly, and you pass it on to your neighbor. The rumor grows, the label becomes bigger and bigger, until one day that man reads the neon sign written about him by society, and he is forced to behave accordingly. The whole society expects him to maintain that image, screaming at him to behave himself whenever he tries to step out of his assigned box. Secondly, even when a person tries his best to live up to your positive label, he cannot do it perfectly. It is impossible because it goes against his natural flow. He can only pretend. He can only wear a mask. And then, one day, when he is tired of pretending, when he is in a relaxed holiday mood, his true reality asserts itself. He does something unexpected. Perhaps he takes some money that doesn't belong to him, and you immediately feel shocked and deceived. You cry out that this man was a hypocrite, a deceiver. But he did not deceive you. Your own rigid labeling deceived you. He was simply trying to fit into your artificial frame, and one day he grew out of it. Nobody is here on this earth to fulfill your expectations. Only very cowardly, fearful people waste their lives trying to satisfy the expectations of others. A real, genuine human being will continuously shatter all the expectations people carry about him. He refuses to be imprisoned by your ideas. He insists on remaining utterly free, which means he will remain beautifully inconsistent. He will do one thing today, and he will do something exactly opposite tomorrow, precisely so that you cannot carry a fixed definition of him in your head. A genuine man carries contradictions within his soul. He is absolute freedom. If he wants to be on the left, he is on the left. If he wants to move to the right, he moves to the right. There is no inner hindrance, no rigid structure holding him back. He can be an extrovert in one moment and a deep introvert in the very next. His freedom chooses in the immediate moment what to do. But society demands consistency. We place a high value on a consistent character. We say, "This man is so reliable. He has been exactly the same for 40 years. But what does consistency really mean? It means this man died 40 years ago. He has stopped living. He is merely repeating his past like a broken gramophone record. He has nothing new to say, nothing fresh to experience, no new dimension to embody." We call such a person a man of character. Yes, he has great social utility. He is highly dependable. You can use him like a well-oiled machine, but he is dead inside. Machines have perfect characters. You can always predict exactly what a machine will do. That is why society is slowly replacing human beings with automated computers. A computer has an impeccable character. It never has a bad mood. It never goes on strike because it feels sad. It works 24 hours a day, year in and year out, without a single variation. A horse has a personality, a soul. Some days he is not in the mood to run. Some days he rebels against the rider. Some days he simply stands there and refuses to move. You cannot always depend on a horse because he is alive. But a motor car has no soul. It is just a collection of dead parts put together. It has no inner center. It simply goes wherever you steer it, even if you drive it straight over a dangerous cliff. It can never say no to you because it lacks the consciousness to say no or yes. By forcing human beings to become men of character, society has been trying to turn you into predictable, dependable machines. It has succeeded to a large extent, and where it fails, it invents mechanical gadgets to replace you. But a true human being has moods because he has a living soul. He can only be authentic if he remains completely characterless in the Zen sense of the word. What do I mean when I say characterless? I mean a person who goes on dropping his past from moment to moment. He does not live according to a dead script written years ago. He lives in the immediate present. He looks around, feels the reality of the moment, and responds spontaneously. He carries no fixed blueprints on how to live. He relies entirely on his awareness. His life remains a beautiful, unpredictable, constant flow. He is responsive, not reactive. A reaction always comes out of the conditioned past, out of a learned prejudice, but a response comes out of your immediate clarity, out of this very moment, this very question, this very situation. It happened in an ancient Zen monastery. A master asked his disciples, "What is the secret of the Buddha? What did he transmit to Mahakashyapa when he handed him that golden lotus flower?" Why did the Buddha say, "I give to Mahakashyapa what I have not been able to give to anyone else, because others can understand only words, but Mahakashyapa can understand my absolute silence"? On that historic day, the Buddha had come to the assembly holding a single lotus flower in his hand. He sat on the master's chair and said nothing. He simply looked at the lotus, deeply absorbed in its beauty, as if he had completely forgotten the thousands of disciples waiting for his sermon. Minutes passed, an hour passed, and the crowd grew incredibly restless, fidgety, tense. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Mahakashyapa started laughing. He laughed, a deep belly laugh. The Buddha called him forward, handed him the lotus flower, and said, "What can be delivered through words, I have given to the others. What cannot be expressed through words, I transmit to you, Mahakashyapa." The Zen master asked his own disciples, what was the secret? What happened in that profound moment of silence? A young disciple stood up, began to dance wildly, and ran out of the room. The master smiled and said, "Right, exactly, that is what it is." But later that night, another old master in the monastery came to see the master in his private room and said, "You should not have agreed so quickly. Your validation was given too early." I suspect that disciple's understanding. So, the master went back to the young disciple's cell in the dead of night, knocked on his door, and asked the exact same question again. "Tell me, what was it that Mahakashyapa understood when he smiled at the Buddha?" The young man immediately stood up and began to dance wildly again, exactly as he had done in the morning. But this time, the master hit him hard with his staff and said, "Wrong, absolutely wrong." The disciple rubbed his head in pain and cried, "But just this morning you told me it was completely right." The master looked at him and said, "Yes, in the morning it was right, but in the night it is utterly wrong. In the morning, your dance was a spontaneous response to the living moment. In the night, it was nothing but a mechanical reaction, a repetition of a dead answer that you thought would please me. You got fixed in a cliché. In real life, nobody ever carries ready-made answers. If you want to remain beautifully quiet, you must drop all your fixed philosophies and cliches. You must become a mirror. Have you ever watched a mirror? If an angry face comes before it, the mirror reflects anger. If a laughing face comes, it reflects laughter. If an old man stands before it, it reflects old age. You cannot accuse the mirror of being inconsistent. You cannot say to it, "Yesterday you showed me laughing, and today you are showing me so sad. You have no character. I will throw you out of the house." The mirror has no character, and that is precisely why it is perfectly true. A real man is like a mirror. He reflects the present reality without any prejudice, without any inner distortion. Zen does not give you a conscience, it gives you consciousness. Conscience is an imposition from the outside world, a set of rules given by your parents, your politicians, and your priests. Conscience tells you, this is good, that is bad, do this, avoid that. Conscience makes you a well-behaved slave. But consciousness is a light that grows from your own innermost center. It makes you luminous from within. It does not give you an armor of rigid rules to defend yourself against life. It simply lights a lamp inside your soul, and that light naturally guides your steps, ensuring that whatever you do is a beautiful, spontaneous response to the living present. This profound Zen attitude arises entirely out of deep meditation. Meditation is the ultimate peak of human consciousness. As you meditate, as you become more silent, you start seeing that everything is interconnected in an organic unity. The Zen people have a magnificent phrase for this. They call it Jijimuge Hokkai. It means the ultimate reality where everything is joined with everything else, where saints and sinners, life and death, good and bad, are all part of one single cosmic net. Just as light cannot exist without darkness, just as a silver lining needs a dark cloud to be seen, the opposites are fundamentally one. When you see this beautiful, interconnected web of existence, all condemnation naturally drops away. You realize that you touch a single blade of grass on this earth, and you have touched all the furthest stars in the sky. Everything is involved in everything else. Let this understanding sink deep into your being. Do not try to still your mind by force. Do not try to run away from the world into a lonely cave. Be in the marketplace, but remain a mirror. Keep your inner cool amidst the storm. This is the ultimate Zen secret to instantly quiet your mind, and the moment you realize it, you will find that the peace you have been searching for all over the world has always been right here, waiting inside you. Look at the big capitals. They would be inside a madhouse. The capitals are just open-air madhouses. where the games are played on a gigantic scale. Look at the children by the river. They are making castles of sand, and each child defends his castle with great passion. Each child shouts, "This one is mine." They keep their sand castles separate, completely isolated, and they will not allow any mistakes about which belongs to whom. They are completely absorbed in the illusion. The sand castle has become their entire universe. They have invested their whole being into a handful of wet dust. They are on guard, trembling with anxiety lest someone step on their creation, lest someone cross the boundary they have drawn in the sand. And then, when the castles are all finished, a sudden shift happens. One child, perhaps out of boredom or a sudden spark of mischief, kicks over someone else's castle. It is completely destroyed, flattened back into anonymous sand. The owner of the castle immediately flies into a fierce rage. He does not see it as just sand. He feels his very ego has been crushed. He pulls the other child's hair, strikes him with his fist, and bawls out at the top of his voice, "He has spoilt my castle. Come along, all of you, and help me to punish him as he deserves." The other children, living in the same illusion of ownership, immediately understand his anger. They feel the threat to their own castles. They all rush to his help. They pick up sticks, they beat the offending child, and they stamp on him as he lies crying on the ground. They punish him severely because he broke the sacred rule of the game. He violated the law of property. Once the criminal has been punished and justice has been served, the children go back to playing with their sand castles. The tension relaxes for a moment, but the watchfulness returns. Each child sits by his pile of dust, saying, "This is mine, no one else may have it. Keep away. Don't you dare touch my castle." But then, the sun begins to set. Evening comes. It is getting dark, and the shadows grow long across the river bank. From the distance, the voices of their mothers can be heard calling them back for dinner. Suddenly, the gear changes. The context is completely altered. The night is approaching, and they all think they ought to be going home. In a single split second, a miracle happens. No one now cares what becomes of his castle. The intense possessiveness, the fierce readiness to kill or be killed for a pile of sand, vanishes into thin air. One child stamps on his own creation, completely flattening it. Another child pushes his over with both hands, laughing as it collapses. There is no regret, no sorrow, no tears. The illusion has lost its grip. The game is over. They simply turn away, empty-handed, and go back, each to his own home. This is the whole story of human life. This is the entire mechanism of your world. As long as you are under the illusion of the day, as long as you think you are going to live here forever, you go on building your grand sandcastles. You call it a bank balance, you call it a political empire, you call it a reputation, you call it a family, a marriage, a nation. You guard these boundaries with absolute madness. You are ready to drop atomic bombs to protect your sandcastles. If someone touches your boundary, you fly into a rage, you declare war, you mobilize armies, you beat each other down into the dust. You take your properties, your titles, your achievements with absolute heavy seriousness. But I tell you, the evening is coming. The darkness of death is approaching every single moment. The shadows are lengthening. Soon, the voice of the whole, the voice of existence, will call you back home. And in that moment, when death stands before you, you will realize that all your grand empires were nothing but castles made of sand on the banks of a flowing river. Not a single thing can be taken with you. You came empty-handed into this world, and you will have to leave it completely empty-handed. An intelligent person does not wait for the physical death to arrive to see this truth. An intelligent person sees it right now. In the very middle of the game, he looks at the sandcastle and realizes its true nature. He does not necessarily stop playing, but he stops being serious about it. He treats it as a play, as a game. If it stands, beautiful. If someone kicks it over, he laughs. He does not pull anyone's hair. He does not beat anyone with a stick. He knows that within a few hours, when the darkness falls, he will have to leave it all behind anyway. The moment seriousness drops out of your life, the mind falls silent. The noise of the mind is entirely created by your seriousness, by your frantic effort to make temporary things permanent. You want your love affairs to be permanent, you want your wealth to be permanent, you want your youth to be permanent, you want your body to be permanent. This effort to force the changing river of life into a frozen, static state is the root cause of all your inner madness. It creates a tremendous friction within your soul. Look at your traditional saints, your moralists. They are the most consistent people in the world. They have created a rigid character for themselves. They have lived according to a fixed script for 40, 50 years. They never deviate to the left. They never deviate to the right. They are completely predictable. Society respects them immensely because they are highly useful, dependable machines. You can always trust a man of character to do exactly what he is expected to do. But a man of character is a dead man. He has no future. He has only a past. His character is nothing but his dead past dominating his living present. He goes on repeating the same old gestures, the same old reactions, the same old moral cliches, day in and year out. He has completely lost his spontaneity. He has sacrificed his living soul at the altar of social respectability. Machines have perfect character. A car has an excellent character. It is completely predictable. It never has a mood. It never says, "Today I am feeling sad, so I am not going to start." It never says, "Today the weather is so beautiful, I want to take a walk in the forest instead of going to the office." It simply obeys. This is what your society has done to you through education, through religion, through morality. It has tried to destroy your living soul and replace it with a dependable mechanical character. Zen says, remain true to your freedom. Zen is the path of characterlessness. By characterlessness, I do not mean immorality. I mean amoral spontaneity. It means dropping your past every single moment and living directly in the present. It means having no ready-made answers, no fixed philosophies, no predetermined ways of behavior. A real man carries huge contradictions within himself. He is utter freedom. He lives moment to moment, responding to the living reality around him, not reacting from his conditioned memory. If you ask a characterless man a question in the morning, he responds out of the morning sun, out of the singing birds, out of his immediate clarity. If you ask him the exact same question in the dead of night, his answer will change completely because the whole world has changed. The context has shifted. The river has flowed into new territories. He is a mirror. If you bring an angry face before a mirror, it reflects anger. If you bring a laughing face, it reflects laughter. You cannot find fault with the mirror for being inconsistent. The mirror has no choice. It simply reflects what is. But you have been trained to be consistent. You have been forced to wear a mask and stick to it, no matter how much it suffocates you. If you are a husband, you must act according to the definition of a trustworthy husband. You must look at other beautiful women and pretend that you see nothing. You must close your eyes to the beauty of the world, because your character demands it. If a woman is alive and kicking, how can she not feel attracted when a beautiful, radiant man passes by? It is completely natural. To deny the attraction is to deny life itself. I am not saying you have to run away with every person you find attractive, but to deny the very phenomenon of attraction is to turn yourself into a corpse. It is to live a life of total pretense, a life of continuous inner suppression. This suppression creates a tremendous noise inside your head. The mind becomes a battleground where your natural instincts are constantly fighting against your artificial character. You are split into two. the conscious ego that pretends to be a saint, and the vast unconscious that boils with repressed desires. You become a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment. Zen resolves this inner conflict from the very root. Zen does not give you a conscience, it gives you consciousness. Conscience is an artificial mechanism manufactured by society to control you from the inside. It is a set of shoulds and should nots that makes you feel continuously guilty, anxious, and paralyzed. Consciousness, on the other hand, is your own inner light. It is your capacity to see, to watch, to witness without any judgment. When you function out of consciousness, you become a mirror. You don't choose, you simply respond. If you are clear, if your vision is transparent, you will always do the right thing in the moment, naturally, effortlessly. You don't need a set of rules to tell you how to behave. If you can see clearly that there is a door and there is a solid stone wall, you don't need a commandment saying, "Thou shalt not walk through the wall." You simply walk through the door because you can see. Only blind people need guidelines. Only blind people need a walking stick. Only blind people need to be told where to step. All your moralities and scriptures are designed for blind people. They give you dead rules because they cannot give you eyes. Zen is not interested in giving you rules. Zen wants to give you your eyesight back. It wants to cure your blindness. It wants to light a lamp at the very center of your being so that your entire life becomes luminous, so that every step you take is guided by your own inner clarity. This clarity opens up a totally new dimension in life, the dimension of effortless transformation. In traditional religions, you have to fight hard to change yourself. You have to practice austerities. You have to fast. You have to torture your body. You have to repress your desires. And after years of hard, agonizing labor, what do you achieve? Nothing but a bigger, more sophisticated ego. You become a great ascetic, a great Mahatma, and your eyes become filled with the dust of self-righteousness. You look down upon everyone else as a sinner destined for hell, while you believe you are the chosen one, walking straight into paradise. Zen transforms you without any effort on your part. It changes you through the simple power of your awareness. The moment you look into a disease with deep, loving, non-judgmental understanding, the disease begins to evaporate. The moment you bring the light of awareness into your inner darkness, the darkness simply ceases to exist. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to push it out with your hands. The presence of light is enough to dissolve it. Look at what happens when you accept someone utterly, unconditionally. If a man or a woman loves you exactly as you are, without demanding any change, without holding any expectations, a miracle happens. Suddenly, your sadness disappears. Your dullness vanishes. A new dance comes into your step. A new song overflows from your heart. You begin to warm up. Your coldness melts away. The very phenomenon of unconditional acceptance acts as a deep therapeutic nourishment for your soul. It gives you integration. It gives you trust. It makes you feel that your original being is respected and beautiful. If an ordinary human love can perform such a miracle, just imagine what happens when you fall in love with a master. A master is someone who loves you utterly, with absolutely no expectations. He does not want you to be anything other than yourself. He does not look at your periphery, your clothes, your bank balance, or your behavior. He looks directly into your innermost core, and he sees that you are tremendously beautiful, that you are already a God, already a Buddha. This love of a master is a healing, therapeutic energy. It shatters all your defenses. Unless you drop your armor, unless you become completely vulnerable, you will not be able to receive this love. You will remain distant, cautious, defensive, ready to run away if things get too close. The moment you drop your defenses and start receiving this love, your transformation begins. You don't have to do any work. The love itself will do it for you. Zen does not believe in outer discipline, in rules and regulations. It believes entirely in the inner discipline that arises out of love, respect, and trust. Traditional religions demand trust as the very first step. They say, first you must believe in God, first you must trust the scriptures, then you will know. Zen says exactly the opposite. Zen says, first meditate, become aware, look into your own mind, and out of that deep meditation, a natural trust will arise on its own accord. That trust is what Zen calls tathata, suchness. It is the absolute acceptance of existence as it is. How can you go on condemning anything when you realize that everything is part of one divine, organic unity? The so-called scholars, the pundits, they go on reciting philosophies saying all is divine, but in their next breath they start condemning the sinner and praising the saint. They say the saint will go to heaven and the sinner will be thrown into hell. This is completely absurd. If everything is divine, if all is God, then who is the sinner? It must be God who is playing the role of the thief. It must be God who has gone out to steal. Then how can God throw himself into hell? Zen drops the word God altogether because the traditional religions have corrupted it so badly. They have contaminated it, polluted it with their fears and greeds. Zen uses the word suchness, or emptiness. When you meditate, you start seeing things as they are, without the interference of your labels and judgments. You see that the sinner and the saint are two aspects of the same cosmic dance, completely interconnected. There is a beautiful description by an art critic, Berenson, about a morning in early summer. He relates how a silver haze shimmered and trembled over the trees, and the air was laden with a gentle caress. He climbed a tree stump and suddenly felt completely immersed in what he called itness. In that state of mind, there were no words. It was not even a specific feeling. He had no need for language. He and the existence were one. Simply, it was there, a great benediction. This is Tathata. This is the moment when you suddenly see that the entire existence is one unitary orchestra, a beautiful pattern where every single note is absolutely necessary. The dark cloud is as much needed as the silver lining. Judas is as much needed as Jesus. Without Judas, the story of Jesus would lose all its depth, all its richness. If you cut Judas out of the scriptures, where is the crucifixion? And without the crucifixion, where is the resurrection? Christianity would completely disappear. It would remain just ordinary, good parental advice. Judas gives contrast. He creates the dark background against which the silver lining of Jesus can shine out in all its glory. Jesus must have felt deeply grateful to Judas. It is no accident that when Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, the very first feet he washed were those of Judas. And when he was taking his final leave, he hugged Judas more closely, kissed him more deeply than anyone else. He knew that Judas was his foremost disciple, chosen for the hardest, most painful mission. There are rumors down the ages in esoteric circles that the entire betrayal was planned by Jesus himself. Gurdjieff believed in this very deeply, and it looks completely logical. Judas was the most intelligent, the most educated, the most intellectual disciple around Jesus. He was the only pundit in the whole group. Do you think a man of such intelligence would sell his master for a mere 30 silver coins? It is impossible. And do you know what happened immediately after Jesus was crucified? Judas committed suicide the very next day. Traditional priests don't talk about this much because they cannot explain it. Why should a cold-blooded traitor commit suicide out of guilt within 24 hours? No, he did not kill himself out of guilt. He committed suicide because his mission was finished. The Master had given him an order, and he had followed it to the very end, even at the cost of being cursed by the entire world for centuries. That is what total surrender is. When the master says, "Go and sell me to the enemies," you simply say yes. You cannot say no to the master. It was a grand cosmic plan. It was only through the cross that the message of Christ could live in the world. Without the cross, Jesus would have been forgotten as just another eccentric revolutionary. The cross was needed for the miracle to happen. When you see the deep interrelatedness of things, all your moral structures fall apart. The devil is no longer a fallen angel fighting against God. He is an angel on a great divine mission sent by God Himself to create the friction necessary for life to exist. The very word devil comes from the same root as divine. They are business partners in the same cosmic firm. Think about your own existence. You think you are a separate being, an isolated island, but you are not. Without your father and your mother, you would not be here. Without their fathers and mothers, they would not have been here, and you would not be here. If you go backwards into the beginningless beginning, you will find that everything that has ever happened in this infinite universe had to happen exactly the way it happened for you to be sitting here right now. If a single blade of grass had been different 1,000,000 years ago, you would not be the person you are today. You are so deeply interconnected. You are the apex, the ultimate flowering of the entire past of the universe. And it does not stop here. From your actions, from your words, from your vibrations will come the future. Your children, their children's children, the resulting actions, the endless reverberations down the ages to the very end of time. You will disappear one day. Your body will return to the earth, but whatsoever you have contributed to the cosmic vibration will continue forever. You hold within yourself the entirety of the past and the seed of the entire future. At this very moment, the past and the future cross each other in you, ad infinitum, in both directions. This moment is all, and you are all. You touch a small blade of grass in the garden, and you have touched all the furthest stars in the sky, because everything is inside everything else. Zen calls this absolute involvement of the whole into each of its parts, Jiji Muge Hokkai. It is illustrated by the magnificent concept of Indra's net. Imagine a great net extending throughout the universe, vertically representing time, horizontally representing space. At each point where the threads of the net cross one another, there is a shining crystal bead representing a single individual existence. Each crystal bead reflects on its shiny surface not only every other bead in the net, but also every single reflection of every other reflection upon every individual bead. It is an endless, boundless mirror play of countless reflections. When Gautam Buddha held up that single lotus flower in his hand. He was showing his disciples this very net. He was showing them the absolute interconnectedness of existence. Mahakashyapa looked at the flower and he saw the whole universe dancing in it. He saw the past, the future, all the stars, the sun, the rain, the earth, all combined in that small blossom. He understood the message. He saw the Jiji Muge Hokkai and he laughed. That laugh was the transmission beyond words. Out of this deep vision arises the authentic Buddhist compassion, the natural gratitude, the absolute respect for all life. When you know that everyone is a mirror reflecting everyone else, how can you judge? How can you look down upon anyone? Look at how Shichiri handled the thief. He did not judge him. He did not look at him with condemnation. He simply accepted his presence. He treated him with deep respect. He trusted him so much that he openly told him to leave some money for the taxes. When you give so wholeheartedly, when you treat a criminal with such immense respect, you shock his system completely. He has never experienced anything like this. He is used to fear. He is used to anger. He is used to resistance. He is used to condemnation. He knows how to deal with a policeman. He knows how to deal with a judge. He knows how to fight against an enemy. But he has no defense against pure, unconditional love and respect. It completely disarms him. It bypasses his entire psychological armor and hits his heart directly. Shichiri told the court, "This man is no thief. I gave him the money and he thanked me for it." He turned the criminal into a friend. He closed the accounts. He wiped out the crime with his compassion. And that is exactly why, the moment the man came out of prison, he could not go back to his old ways. The image of that master, sitting silently, reciting sutras, treating him like a guest, giving him money as a gift, must have haunted him day and night. He must have realized that this man possesses a treasure that can never be stolen, a richness that makes all worldly wealth look like junk. He had to go back and learn the secret of that richness. He had to become a sannyasin. My attitude towards the world is exactly the same. I don't tell you to renounce money. I don't tell you to call money dirt. The religious people who close their eyes when they see money are simply living in a state of fear. Their fear is nothing but their greed standing on its head. If you go to a so-called saint with money, he will look away. He will refuse to touch it. He says money is dirt. But he never closes his eyes when he looks at actual dirt on the road. This is highly illogical. What is this deep fear of a piece of paper, of a gold coin? The fear exists because deep down, the greed is still alive, waiting for the right opportunity to assert itself. He has to repress it violently. He has to keep his eyes closed to stay safe. Zen has a completely empirical, practical attitude. Money is utilitarian, it is instrumental. You need not live for money, you need not become obsessed with it, but you need not be against it either. It has a purpose in the world. Shichiri openly said, "Leave a little money for me. Tomorrow I have to pay my taxes." He was not afraid of money. He was not attached to it either. He used it as a tool. To call someone a thief is to believe deeply in private property. It is to believe that you can rightly own a part of this earth. But Zen says nothing belongs to anybody. You come into this world empty-handed, you live here for a few days, and you go out empty-handed. How can you own anything in between? You can only use it. We are all guests here, sharing the resources of this beautiful planet. Take the money if you need it, but leave a little for me too, because I am also here to use it. This is a totally different way of looking at life. It drops the very concept of ownership, and with the drop of ownership, stealing disappears. A true master does not preach morality. He shows a way of being. He operates on your heart like a great, silent surgeon. He destroys your old egoistic structures completely, and he creates you anew without you even being aware of what is happening. This is the true miracle of a master. An ancient Zen sutra says, "The man of understanding does not reject error." Let this sutra echo in the deepest core of your heart. The man of understanding does not reject error. Another master, Ohasama, commenting on this sutra, said, "Truth does not need to be sought first, for it is present everywhere, even in error. Hence, he who rejects error rejects truth." This is an incredibly radical, revolutionary standpoint. If you reject the error, if you reject the sinner, you are rejecting the divine existence that is hidden behind that error. The error is just on the surface, just a dark cloud. Behind that cloud is the pure, luminous sun of truth. Accept the error, look into it with loving, caring eyes, and the truth will reveal itself. Once the light of truth arises, the error will naturally disappear on its own accord. You don't have to fight with the darkness. You simply have to light a small candle. There is another beautiful story about Master Taigen. One midnight, as he was writing a letter, a thief entered his room carrying a big, naked sword. The moment Taigen looked at him, before the thief could even speak, the master said, "Which do you want, my money or my life?" This is even more beautiful than Shichiri's story. Taigen does not even give the thief a chance to demand anything. He takes the lead. He says, Both are completely irrelevant to me. Whatsoever you need, you can take. It is entirely your choice." The thief, completely shocked by this reception, looked at the master and whispered, "I came for money." He was getting a little bit afraid. He had never come across such a strange dragon in his whole life. He was standing there with a naked sword, and this old monk was offering his life or his money with absolute calmness, as if they were just two ordinary options. Taigen took out his purse, handed it to the man, and said, "Here it is." And then he immediately returned to writing his letter, as if absolutely nothing had happened. The thief felt completely ill at ease. The whole situation was upside down. He took the purse and started running out of the room, totally overawed. Just as he was reaching the door, Taigen called out after him, "Hey, wait a minute." The thief stood frozen, shuddering with intense fear. He thought, now the trap is closing, now he is going to attack me or call the guards. He turned back, trembling. Taigen looked at him and said, "Why don't you shut the door? It is a cold night." Days later, when the thief was captured by the police for his other crimes, he told them, "I have been robbing houses for years. I have faced many dangerous situations, but I have never been so terrified in my entire life as when that Buddhist master called after me, 'Hey, wait a minute. That man is incredibly dangerous.' I held a naked sword in my hand, but that was nothing. He himself was the naked sword. And I have decided that the day I am released from prison, I am going straight back to that man to become his disciple." How can you kill a master with a sword? The master is already dead. He has already died the great death. He has already dissolved his ego into nothingness. You can cut his body, but you cannot touch his being. He is the naked sword of awareness. When you come close to him, he is going to kill you, but his killing is a resurrection. He kills your old, rotten ego, your conditioned mind, and he gives you a new birth, a fresh life. He sets your stagnant river flowing again towards the infinite ocean. There was another Zen master who went even a step further. He was put into jail several times for stealing small things from his neighbors. The neighbors were completely puzzled. They knew he was a wise monk, a beautiful soul. Why does he go out and steal such petty things? And the moment he would be released from prison, he would immediately go and steal something else just to get caught and sent back. Even the judges were worried, but they had to sentence him because he would openly confess to the crime. He never denied it. Finally, the neighbors gathered together at the prison gate when he was coming out. They said, "Sir, please stop this nonsense. You are getting old." and we are ready to provide you with everything you need. Whatsoever your necessities are, we will fulfill them. Please stop stealing. It makes us very sad to see you in prison." The old man laughed a beautiful, joyful laugh. He said, "You don't understand. I don't steal because I need anything. I steal in order to get into the jail with the prisoners, to bring them the inner message. Outside, for you respected people, there are many masters available. But inside the jail, for these poor souls, there is no master. Who will help them if I do not? This is my way to get inside and share the light with those people. And I have found there in the jail such beautiful, innocent souls, far more innocent than the people living outside in your respectable society. This is the ultimate transcendence of all value systems. Zen does not care for your social rules of respectability. It brings only one thing into the world: pure understanding, absolute awareness. And out of that awareness comes a pristine innocence. That innocence knows no distinction between good and bad, between inside the jail and outside the jail. It simply flows wherever it is needed. Look at Master Ryokan. He was a great master, but he was exactly like a child. He was the child Jesus spoke about when he said, "Unless you become like a child, you cannot enter into the kingdom of God." Ryokan was so innocent that people who were clever and cunning used to think he was a little bit mad. He had no cleverness in him, no arithmetic, no strategy. He loved to play with the children of his village. He would spend hours playing hide and seek with them. One evening, it was his turn to hide, and he went and hid himself beautifully under a straw stack in a farmer's field. He sat there, curled up, waiting for the children to find him. But it was growing darker. The sun had set, and the children, unable to locate him, simply forgot about the game and went back to their homes. Ryokan remained under the straw stack the whole night, completely silent, waiting for the children. Early the next morning, the farmer came to the field to begin his work. He started removing the straw stack, and suddenly he found Master Ryokan sitting there in the dust. The farmer was shocked. He exclaimed, "Oh, Ryokan-sama, what on earth are you doing here?" Ryokan immediately put his finger on his lips and whispered, "Hush, don't talk so loud. The children will find me." The entire night he has been sitting under that straw, completely happy, living in the space of the game, waiting for the children to find him. Such absolute innocence is Zen. Such innocence is divine. It knows no boundaries. It knows no calculations. It knows no anxiety about the future. It is completely settled in the here and now. This suchness, this absolute simple presence, is the innermost core of true religion. People often ask me about peace of mind. They say, peace of mind can be gained by withdrawing from the world, by stilling the mind, by escaping to the mountains. But I tell you, withdrawal is not the way to peace. Withdrawal is a form of cowardice, a subtle escape. It can give you a kind of quietude, but that quietude is the quietude of a graveyard. It is a dead peace, a loveless peace, a warless peace, but completely juiceless. You can go to a Catholic monastery, you can go to Jaina monks, and you will find a great stillness around them. But if you look into their eyes, you will see dust, not radiance. You will find their hearts are deserts, completely dry, no juice flows through them. They have renounced life out of fear. They have renounced commitments, responsibilities, relationships. They are no longer fighting, but they are no longer loving either. They have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Peace can never be the ultimate goal. Peace can only be a means to more life, to a more abundant, vibrant, dancing life. What is the point of being peaceful if you are just dead? Just to be quiet leads nowhere. If you go to the Himalayas and live in a cave for 30 years, you will feel very peaceful because there is no one to disturb you. There is no wife to argue with, no boss to shout at, no neighbors to create trouble. But you have not changed at all. You have only changed the circumstances. If you come back to the marketplace after 30 years and someone comes and insults you, you will be surprised to see that anger arises instantly with the same intensity as before. Those 30 years in the cave did not destroy the anger. It was simply waiting for the right season. The moment someone insulted you, the spring arrived and the anger bloomed into full force. In a single second, your 30 years of forced quietude disappear into thin air. The real test of your peace is in life, in the very middle of the marketplace. If you are truly peaceful, be peaceful where there is noise, where there is chaos, where there is distraction. I am not for renunciation. I am all for life affirmation. Live life as totally as possible. Explore every dimension of it, but find a way to live it meditatively, peacefully, divinely. Don't run away like a coward. The escapist is like an ostrich. When the ostrich sees an enemy approaching, he simply buries his head in the sand. He believes that because he cannot see the enemy does not exist anymore. This is highly stupid. It is a form of auto-hypnosis. Just by closing your eyes, the world does not change. Your house is on fire, and you can sit with closed eyes, meditating, believing that everything is perfectly okay. You may feel undisturbed for a few moments. but the fire is real, and it will burn you down. A real man of peace lives in the world, with the world, and yet is not of it. If his house is on fire, he will do everything within his power to put the fire out, running around, fetching water, completely active, and yet deep down at his center, he remains completely undisturbed, unwavering, settled in his silence. This integration, this synthesis of outer action and inner silence is what I call real peace. And don't try to still your mind through repression. The mind cannot be forced into silence. People try to control their minds through yoga postures, by repeating a mantra, Om, Ram, anything, focusing their attention on an image of Krishna or Christ. They are just creating a false, artificial substitute. They are repressing the noise, pushing it down into the unconscious mind. A forced silence is not silence at all. It is a volcano waiting to erupt. The mind has to be understood, not repressed. Why is the mind so noisy? Why does it go on making such a mess inside you? You must befriend your mind. Look into its noises with deep love and compassion. Listen to its dreams, even if they look completely absurd, because they are carrying valuable messages from your unconscious soul. By cutting off those messages, by forcing the mind to be still, you are cutting off your own roots. You are saying to your unconscious, I don't want to hear you. The unconscious is closer to the divine than your small, superficial conscious mind. When you still your mind through willpower, you are simply paralyzing your inner being. You can force a child to sit silently by threatening him with an electric shock, and out of sheer fear, he will sit like a statue. But inside, he is boiling, he is going mad, he is a total wreck. This is what people do to their minds through fasting, through self-torture, through ascetic practices. They give shocks to the mind, they starve it, they force it into a corner until the terrified mind keeps quiet. But can a song be born out of this quietude? Can there be a dance, a celebration, a true joy out of this forced suppression? White lotuses never grow in a desert. They need the rich mud of life to bloom. This is why I am against all shortcuts. The work has to be done layer by layer, with infinite patience, with great playfulness. You have to understand every single message of your mind. You have to watch every single dream, every single desire, without any hurry to destroy it. And then, one day, when the mind has been completely heard, when it has delivered all its secrets to the Master, it falls silent on its own accord. Effortlessly, it slips into silence. That silence is a true benediction, a beautiful flower of understanding. People ask me if self-awareness requires a religious commitment. I tell you, awareness naturally flowers into action. If you are aware, that awareness cannot remain locked inside you like the treasure of a miser. It starts overflowing into your daily life. It illuminates every single move you make. It changes the very quality of your actions. If a man of awareness loves, his love is a totally different reality. It is no longer a fall. Ordinary people fall in love. Falling means you have lost your alignment. You have lost your consciousness. You have become blind. A man of awareness does not fall in love. He rises in love. He goes higher, deeper, more expansive. Your ordinary love is nothing but an illusion, a mutual bargain, a business contract. You want to use the other person to fulfill your needs, and the other person wants to use you to fulfill his needs. Neither of you loves the other. You both love yourselves. You use each other as means to an end, and you give it a beautiful name. You call it love. This is an adjustment, a social settlement, and because it is a bargain, it cannot go very far. Sooner or later, you explore each other completely. The novelty wears off, and there is nothing new to discover. The interest wanes, and love starts disappearing. Then, at the most, you tolerate each other because of past promises, because of social respectability, because of the children. You carry the heavy dead body of a marriage on your shoulders, pretending to the world that everything is perfectly beautiful. This so-called love is created by chemical changes in your bloodstream. It is as chemical as taking a drug. Certain hormones are released, and you start seeing things in a woman that simply do not exist. You are dreaming with open eyes, living a beautiful daydream. But the drug wears off eventually. The chemistry settles down, and the harsh reality asserts itself. Then you feel cheated, disillusioned. The man of awareness is capable of authentic love because he has found himself. He is completely happy alone. His happiness does not depend on anyone else. It is autonomous, self-contained. He does not need you to make him happy. He is already overflowing with joy. And because he has so much, he has to share it. He gives love, not out of need, but out of absolute abundance. Ordinary people give love like a bait to catch a fish. They are not interested in feeding the fish. They want to trap it. The man of awareness gives love simply because love is like a flower. If it blooms in you, it must release its fragrance to the winds, otherwise it will die. You cannot hoard love, just as you cannot hoard a morning flower. If you lock a flower in an iron safe to protect it, it will stink and die within hours. Let me tell you an ancient parable about a great king who had 3 intelligent, courageous sons. He wanted to choose one of them to be his heir, but it was very difficult because they were twins, all of the same age, all equally capable. He sought the advice of a wise sage, and the sage suggested a test. The king called his 3 sons and gave each of them a bag of flower seeds. He told them, "I am going on a long religious pilgrimage. It may take a few years, 1, 2, 3, or more. This is your test. You must protect these seeds for me, and when I return, whosoever returns them in the best condition will become the heir to my kingdom." And the king left. The first son thought, "What should I do to keep these seeds absolutely safe?" He went to his room, locked the seeds inside a heavy iron safe, and decided to never open it until his father returned. He wanted to return them exactly as they were. The second son thought, "If I lock these seeds in a safe like my brother, they will suffocate and die. A dead seed is no longer a seed. My father may argue that he gave me live seeds with the potential to grow, and I am returning dead matter." So he went to the market, sold the seeds, and kept the money safely in his bank. He thought, "When my father comes back, I will take this money, go to the market, purchase fresh, high-quality seeds, and give them back to him." But the third son was the best, a true mystic. He went out into the palace garden and threw the seeds all over the ground, sowing them into the rich earth. After 3 years, the king returned from his pilgrimage. He called his first son and asked for the seeds. The first son opened his heavy iron safe and brought out the bag. The seeds were completely dead, rotten, stinking. The king looked at them and said, "What? These are the seeds I gave you. They carried the possibility to bloom into beautiful flowers, to fill the air with magnificent perfume, and you are returning stinking matter. These are not my seeds. You are a materialist, completely blind to the life within things." He went to the second son. The second son rushed to the market, purchased a bag of fresh seeds, came back, and handed them to his father. The king looked at them and said, "These are good seeds, but they are not the same seeds I gave you. You are a psychologist, a calculating mind, a businessman. You are better than the first, but you still miss the true spirit of life." Then he went to the third son with great hope and a bit of anxiety. The third son took his father by the hand and led him out into the garden. There were millions of plants blooming, millions of magnificent flowers swaying in the morning breeze, releasing an incredible fragrance into the air. The sun smiled and said, "Father, these are the seeds you gave me. Soon the flowers will wither, and I will collect millions of fresh seeds from them to give back to you. Right now, they are getting ready." The king embraced his third son with tears of joy. He said, "You are the spiritualist. You are my true heir." This is exactly how one should behave with seeds. This is how one should behave with life. The mind can only hoard. The mind can only calculate. But that will always miss the point. The hoarder remains empty, and the businessman misses the beauty. Only a creative mind, a mind that throws its seeds into existence, can understand the mystery of life. Love cannot be hoarded. God cannot be hoarded. If you try to hold on to them, they die. You have to distribute them. You have to share them. You have to give them away to anyone who is willing to receive. And the more you give, the more it grows. If you go on giving unconditionally, a day comes when you become an infinite, inexhaustible source of love. Awareness is the seed, and your compassionate actions are the flowering of that seed. A truly religious person is deeply committed, but his commitment is not to a dead ideology, a flag, a nation, or a church. A Christian is committed to Christianity, a politician to his party, a nationalist to his country. These are all small egoistic commitments. A religious person belongs to no nation, belongs to no organized church, belongs to no political party. He knows there are no boundaries on this earth. His commitment is to existence itself, to consciousness, to the divine presence that permeates everything. He breathes in God. He loves in God. He moves in God. He dies in God. The traditional saints escaped to the forests because they were afraid of the action, afraid of the relationship. But if your awareness does not become an act of love, it is impotent. It is still a dream. When Mahavira found the truth, he came back to the society. When Buddha achieved enlightenment, he returned to human habitations. One has to come back to share. You can search for the truth in loneliness, but you need people to share the joy. How can you distribute the flowers if there is no one around to receive them? I see many people get shocked when I use direct, down-to-earth language, words that society considers vulgar or disrespectful. They come to me and say, "We cannot believe a saint using such common proletarian words." But I tell you, drop that nonsense about me. I am not a saint. I am happy that I am not, and I warn you, never become a saint. Just to be a plain, ordinary, authentic human being is more than enough. The human mind lives in artificial hierarchies. It has not only divided human beings into higher and lower, it has even divided words into respectable words and untouchable words. This is sheer foolishness. All words are just sounds. Their only function is to express reality. And sometimes the words that are considered the lowest in the hierarchy are the most expressive because they come directly from the common man, from the earth, without any intellectual abstraction. They hit the target directly. Let me tell you a small story about a vicar who was alone on the first tee of a golf course. A stranger approached him and suggested they play together. As they moved along the course, the stranger began giving advice to the minister, all of it excellent. By the end of the round, the vicar had finished 6 strokes under his usual score. He was delighted. He thanked his partner profusely. The stranger looked at him and said, "That will be $25. I am the golf pro here." The vicar was shocked. He tried to argue, but the pro insisted on his fee. Finally, the vicar told him, "Okay, drop by the rectory this evening to collect your money. And when you come, please bring your mother and your father with you. I would like to marry them at the same time." This is a very roundabout, respectable way of calling someone a bastard. I don't like this way. It is hypocritical. I prefer to be direct, to call a spade a spade. Aldous Huxley relates that during the Great Irish Potato Famine a century ago, a special prayer was composed to be recited in all the churches of Ireland. The purpose was to entreat the Almighty to stop the disease that was destroying the potato crop. But right from the beginning, the word potato presented a great difficulty for the priests. In the eyes of the church, the word potato was too common, too vulgar, too proletarian to be pronounced in a sacred place before God. The horribly vulgar potato had to be concealed behind a decent, sonorous, intellectual abstraction. So, God was requested to do something about the succulent tuber. Huxley writes, "The sublime has soared up into the empyrean of the ludicrous. Can you imagine eating a succulent tuber? A potato is perfect, innocent, simple, but the priests could not use it." In a similar situation, a Zen master would have also avoided the word potato, not because it was too low, but because it was too conventional, too respectable. He would have used the plain, monosyllabic word spud. I trust Zen. My approach is completely Zen. I love words that are alive, down to earth, expressive. I don't respect your social hierarchies. For centuries, people have been praying to God in dead languages that they don't even understand. In India, they pray in Sanskrit. In the West, they used to pray in Latin or Greek or Hebrew. Even the priest who is reciting the prayers does not understand what he is saying. Jainas use Prakrit, Buddhists use Pali, languages that have completely disappeared from common life. Why do they use dead languages? Because it creates a false sense of distance, a false sense of holiness, an unearthly abstraction. If you talk to God in the language you use in the marketplace, it looks too ordinary, too common. It pulls God down to your level. But what is wrong with pulling God down to your level? Communication is possible only when you both exist on the same plane. God has to be brought down into your kitchen, into your bedroom, into your shop, because He is already there. He is not sitting somewhere in the clouds. He is the very life that flows through your veins. So, if you are shocked by my words, good. That shows you are still alive, that something can be stirred in you. It keeps you alert. It prevents you from falling asleep while I am speaking. If you have a fixed idea of how a saint should behave, that idea is going to be shattered here. I am an iconoclast. My whole effort is to destroy your ideals, your ideologies, your prejudices, because these ideas are the real barriers between you and reality. A saint worth the name is completely unpredictable. You cannot draw a line around him and say, this is your definition, stay within it. If a man allows you to define him, if he behaves exactly according to your expectations to gain your respect, he is a politician, a deceiver, not a saint. He is getting his ego nourishment from your opinions. No true master, no Buddha, no Jesus, no Mahavira has ever lived according to the expectations of his contemporary society. That is exactly why they all got into deep trouble. Jesus would not have been crucified if he had behaved like a respectable Jewish priest. Mahavira would not have been stoned, whipped, and thrown out of villages if he had followed the established morality of his time. They were free souls, wild birds flying in the sky of consciousness. If you see a man who behaves with absolute consistency, according to a certain religious text, beware of him. He is a slave, not a master. He does not know freedom. He has not stumbled upon his inner light. I am not here to fulfill your identity of a saint. I don't care about your opinions. If you are here to learn, learn. And meanwhile, you will have to go through many shocks. These shocks are essential surgical processes to awaken your sleeping understanding. If you are courageous, stay. If you are a coward, go and find some dummy saint, some dead idol who will always behave exactly the way you want. Why have certain words become condemned in your civilized world? Because you have condemned the realities behind them. If you are against sex, then the very word sex becomes shocking, obscene. You cannot pronounce it in polite society. You have to go roundabout. You have to use euphemisms. For centuries, humanity has lived in a deep suppression of sexual energy. This is the very first century where human beings have gathered enough courage to look into sex directly, to research it, to analyze it, to explore its mysteries. And because it was suppressed for thousands of years, one of the most potential energies of human consciousness has remained completely unexplored. We know so much about the moon, we know so much about the electrons, but we know absolutely nothing about sexuality. This is highly stupid because sex is our foundational energy. We are born out of it. Our children happen through it. The entire existence is deeply sensuous and sexual. If you miss understanding this basic energy, you will miss understanding life itself. And if you miss life, how can you ever know the divine? Don't think that because you have children, you know about sex. Reproduction is a mechanical, biological phenomenon. Even animals give birth to children, but they don't know anything about the mystery of sexuality. In Africa, there was a primitive tribe that believed for centuries that the birth of a child had absolutely nothing to do with sexual intercourse. They believed it was a direct gift from God. Why? Because they had no arithmetic, they could not count ahead. To count 9 months was too much for their primitive minds. And because every intercourse was not followed by a child, and because there was such a long gap of 9 months, they could not connect the cause and the effect. They were giving birth to children mechanically, without any conscious knowledge of the energy involved. We are exactly like that primitive tribe. We know more about electricity than we know about our own sexual energy. Electricity is not as vital to our being as sexuality. We can live without electricity, but we cannot exist without sex. But the very word became a sin because your priests told you that nature is evil. A bride-to-be was talking to her mother about her upcoming marriage. She said, "Mother, when we are married, I am going to cook for him, sew for him, shine his shoes, darn his socks. What more could any man possibly want?" The mother looked at her and sighed, "Nothing, unless he is evil-minded." This is the situation. The most natural, innocent phenomenon is thought to be evil-minded, and exactly the same has happened with death. We don't talk about death. It is considered embarrassing, obscene, taboo. A few days ago, an English publisher offered to publish one of my books, but they wrote a letter saying, "The book is beautiful, but we cannot accept the title until you die." The very idea of death will put readers off. It will ruin the sales. We must change the title. Think of it. The title is a direct saying of Jesus Christ, and in a deeply Christian country, the publishers are terrified of the word death. They think it puts people off. Nobody wants to look into death. Nobody wants to think about it. So all words connected with death are dropped from common circulation. But to me, the whole of life is holy, and the whole of death is holy too. All that exists is unconditionally sacred. I carry no condemnation for anything whatsoever, and therefore the entire language is available to me. I don't have to hide behind respectable masks. People come to me and say, "We want to work on ourselves. We want to find our path. Tell us what work we should do." But I tell you, we don't do any work here. The very word work is inapplicable to the phenomenon that goes on in this place. It is play, pure play. To call it work brings in seriousness, brings in the ego, creates inner friction. Work means conflict, struggle, tension. The followers of Gurdjieff use the word work because Gurdjieff believed in friction, in fighting hard against oneself. With me, it is diametrically opposite. It is not work. It is an effortless let go. When I am gone, if you want to give a name to my movement, call it the play. It is relaxation. It is surrender. It is allowing the divine to happen to you rather than you trying to achieve it. All you're doing is nothing but undoing. The more you do, the more your ego strengthens, and the more obstacles you create on your path. You have to stop doing. You have to start floating, flowing with the river of life. Let go is my only mantra. And when you are in a state of total let go, things start happening on their own accord. Not that you do them, the whole does them through you. Imagine you are in a dark room in the morning, with all the doors and windows closed. The sun has risen, and it is standing right outside your door, silently waiting. It will not ring the bell. It will not knock violently. It will not shout. It will simply wait. The moment you open the door, the light rushes in and fills the room. Exactly like that. The divine presence is constantly standing at your door, waiting. You don't have to go out to find it. You don't have to work hard to bring it from somewhere else. You simply have to open the door. You have to stop standing in the way. You have to drop your inner blockages. My only effort here is to teach you how to play, how to be in deep love with existence, how to become more sensitive, more alive, more sensuous. Look at the trees, listen to the birds, watch the stars, and allow the divine to shower upon you from every direction. All great things start very silently, without any bang. A child is conceived in the mother's womb in absolute silence. A seed disappears into the earth in total quietude, and a beautiful green sprout arises. True initiation is not a formal ritual. It is a love affair that happens in the deepest recesses of the heart. Sometimes it starts even before you have ever seen me physically. It starts when you are thousands of miles away, across the oceans. The moment your heart connects with my vibration, the seed has already broken underground. The sprouts are growing silently beneath the surface. It may take a little time for you to recognize them because they have not yet come above the ground, but soon they will appear. Your only work is to relax and take care of your openness. Once you enter the stream, swimming becomes a total waste of energy. Don't waste your strength fighting against the current. The river is already moving towards the ocean, and I am moving towards the ocean. If you have surrendered to me, you have entered the stream. You don't need to swim, you simply need to relax, become one with the current, and you will reach the infinite destination effortlessly. According to Zen, the most fundamental disease of humankind is desire, desiring, becoming. You are always hankering for something that is not here. You want more money, more power, more prestige, or you want God, samadhi, nirvana. The object does not matter. The mechanism of hankering is the disease. You are never here. You are always somewhere else. You are always running towards the future, chasing a dangling carrot. You are a being. You are already that which you can become. There is absolutely no need for you to become anything else. You are already a God, already a Buddha, right now, in this very moment. All that is needed is a simple recognition, a sudden awakening to your true nature. But because you are obsessed with becoming something else, you miss that which you already are. If a disciple goes to a true Zen master and says, "I want to become a Buddha," the master will immediately beat him with his staff. He will say, "If I don't beat you, the whole world will laugh at me. You are a Buddha, and you are asking how to become a Buddha. You are trying to achieve that which is already your inner reality. How can you become something if you are not already that in your potential?" A rose becomes a rose because it is already a rose seed. A lotus becomes a lotus because it carries the potential of a lotus. If a man becomes an enlightened Buddha, it simply means he was a Buddha all along, but he took a little time to recognize it. Dull people take many lives to recognize it. Intelligent people see it in a single split second. Just a nod of the head, a sudden explosion of insight, and the work is finished. Desire creates a state of chronic drunkenness in human consciousness. It makes you unconscious, unaware. It turns you into a spiritual alcoholic. Because your mind is always roaming all over the world, chasing future goals, you lose your roots, you lose your grounding, you lose your center. Except this very place where you find yourself, You want to be everywhere else. Except this precious moment that you are in, you want to be in every other moment. You spend your entire life worrying about what will happen after death, but you completely forget to live the life that is available before death. One day a man came to me and asked, "What is your opinion about life after death?" I told him, "I don't talk about life after death. I talk about life before death. You have not even tasted the life that is present right now, and you are worried about the future. Live this moment fully, and the future will take care of itself. Ambition covers your eyes like a heavy curtain of dust. When you are drunk with desire, you lose your eyesight. You become completely blind to the reality of the present. You live in a private world of fantasies and illusions. Imagine a drunkard standing in front of a cigarette vending machine in a bar. He puts a coin in, pulls the lever, and a pack of cigarettes drops down. He takes it, puts another coin in, pulls the lever, and another pack drops. He keeps doing this again and again, creating a huge pile of cigarette packs on the floor. Another customer walks up, waits for a while, and finally says, "Excuse me, mister, can't you let me have a turn?" The drunkard looks at him with angry, bloodshot eyes and shouts, "You must be completely cuckoo. Can't you see I am on a winning streak? This is your situation. You go on repeating the same desires, gathering the same empty packages of worldly achievements, completely blind to the fact that you are winning nothing. You are just wasting your life coins in a mechanical game." Or think of two soldiers drinking heavily in a small town bar. In front of them are dozens of empty bottles, and every few minutes they stop and stare at an incredibly old, ugly woman sitting at a nearby table. One soldier looks at her, shakes his head, and murmurs, "Not yet." After a few more drinks, the other soldier looks at her and whispers, "Not yet." A bystander, completely intrigued by this strange behavior, approaches them and asks, "Excuse me, what on earth are you doing?" One of the soldiers looks up and replies, "As soon as she begins to look beautiful, we know it is time to call it a night. When you are drunk with desire, ugly things start looking beautiful, temporary illusions start looking permanent, and dead packages start looking like absolute treasures. You lose all capacity to see things as they are." A man who had been drinking heavily all night crept into his bed in total darkness so his wife wouldn't wake up. When he opened his eyes at daybreak, he looked at the bottom of the bed and was shocked to see 3 pairs of feet sticking out, and one pair was completely black. He frantically woke his wife up and said, "Hey, Mary, look at that. There are 3 pairs of feet in our bed." Mary looked at him with utter disgust and said, Don't talk so bloody daft. You have drunk yourself completely stupid. Get out of bed and count them properly." So the husband got out of bed, walked to the bottom, carefully counted them, and came back relieved. He said, "You are quite right, honey, only 2 pairs, but boy, are my feet dirty. This is exactly how you live." You cannot see your own situation because your eyes are covered with the thick dust of desire. You are completely blind to the reality that is present right here now. Zen says, don't fight desire. Don't struggle against it. If you start struggling with desire, you will have to create another desire, the desire to destroy desire. This is the ultimate trap. All struggle is the way of the mind, the way of desire. If you try to fight one desire, you will simply get out of one trap and fall instantly into another. This is what happens to your so-called religious people. They get bored with the material world. They get frustrated with money and family, and they immediately start desiring God, desiring nirvana, desiring samadhi. The direction has changed. The object has changed, but the mechanism remains exactly the same. Desire is the world. You cannot desire God. Whatsoever you desire becomes part of your worldly track. Desirelessness is godliness. Desirelessness is nirvana. The question is not of creating a fresh spiritual desire. Everybody gets fed up with the world one day or another. It does not need much intelligence to see that money cannot give you bliss. So you change the content. Now you want spiritual powers. Now you want siddhis. Now you want to experience satori. But desiring continues. The object has changed. The situation remains exactly as before. Zen says, simply understand the mechanism of desire. Look into it with absolute clarity. See how it leads you astray, how it takes you away from the present moment, how it keeps you in a state of continuous drunkenness. In that very seeing, in that total realization, desire simply falls away from you like a dead leaf from a tree. A sudden realization, a sudden enlightenment dawns upon you, and you find yourself back home, laughing out loud. There is a beautiful story about a young girl taking a gentle stroll through the woods. Suddenly, she sees an extremely ugly bullfrog seated on a log. To her absolute amazement, the frog speaks to her in a human voice. "Maiden," croaks the frog, "would you please do me a huge favor? This will be very hard for you to believe, but I was once a magnificent, charming prince. A mean, ugly old witch cast a terrible spell over me and turned me into this frog. Oh, what a pity!" exclaims the pretty girl. I will do anything within my power to help you break this spell. Well, miss, replies the frog, the only way this spell can be broken, the only way I can return to being a handsome prince, is for some lovely, pure young girl to take me home and let me spend the night under her pillow. The young girl, filled with romance and compassion, takes the ugly frog home, places him beneath her pillow, and goes to sleep. When she awakens the next morning, sure enough, lying beside her in the bed is an incredibly young, handsome prince, clearly of royal blood. And so, they lived happily ever after, except that to this very day, her mother and her father still do not believe her story. Your entire life is full of such stories, because all your desires create nothing but beautiful romantic fantasies to cover up ugly realities. You go on changing your stories, you go from one illusion to another, from one prince to another, but you remain trapped in the world of dreams. When you understand the fundamental mechanism of illusion as such, there is a sudden break, a total breakthrough. An intense insight dawns upon your consciousness. In that magnificent moment, not only this material world becomes completely meaningless, but all worlds, heaven, paradise, hell, become completely meaningless too. In that moment, there is absolutely nothing left to be desired. You don't even desire desirelessness. Suddenly, the smoke of desire vanishes completely, and the flame of your consciousness burns absolute, bright, clean, and transparent. Remember, do not just change your problems from one track to another. It does not help at all. A little girl named Jenny was deeply impressed by the clergyman's sermon about the final judgment, where God will separate the sheep from the goats. That night, after she had gone to bed, her mother heard her sobbing bitterly. The mother rushed into the room and asked, "Jenny, what is the matter? Why are you crying?" "It is about the goats," Jenny confessed, weeping hard. "I am so terribly afraid that I am a goat, and so I will never go to heaven. Oh, mother, I am so afraid I am a goat." The mother smiled, embraced her, and assured her, "My dear sweet child, you are a beautiful little lamb. If you were to die tonight, you would go straight to heaven. Don't worry at all." Her words were successful. Jenny quieted down and fell fast asleep. But the very next night, the mother found Jenny crying again in her bed, sobbing even more bitterly than before. She ran to her and said, "Jenny, mother has already told you that you are a little lamb. You must never worry about being a goat." Jenny looked up with large tear-filled eyes and wailed, "Yes, Mama, I know that. But I am afraid, I am awfully afraid that you are a goat." This is how your mind functions. You solve one problem and immediately Another problem arises out of the same structure. The basic anxiety remains untouched. This is not the way to find silence. You have to look at the very root from where all your problems grow. Zen does not consider anger, sex, greed, or violence as separate problems. Zen says these are all branches of one single tree, and the root of that tree is desire. Cut the root, and the entire tree, with all its toxic fruits and branches, disappears instantly. People ask me, Osho, what are you doing here exactly? And my answer is very simple. I am selling water by the side of a flowing river. When Master Sogaku Harada died at the ripe age of 91, a piece of calligraphy written by his own hand hung at his funeral service. It read, "For 40 years I have been selling water by the bank of a river. Ho, ho! My labors have been wholly without merit." This can be uttered only by an authentic Zen master. First, he says he has been selling water by the river where there is absolutely no need for it. The river is flowing right there, crystal clear, infinite. You don't need to buy water from anyone. You can simply jump into the river and drink your fill. But human beings are so stubborn, so blind, so foolish, that they need someone to pack the water, label it, and sell it to them, even while they are standing on the river bank. Secondly, he says, "Ho, ho! My labors have been wholly without merit." This is a magnificent, profound statement. Zen masters know that if you do good in this world, it is completely useless because basically everything is already perfectly good, already divine. If you help people to become enlightened, what is the point? They were already enlightened from the very beginning. You have not done anything new. You have just awakened them to a reality they had always possessed. It is incredibly ridiculous for me to sit here every day and try to enlighten you. And you are so beautifully stubborn, you refuse to become enlightened. And I go on selling water by the river, and you actually pay for the water. You refuse to look at the river that is flowing right beside your feet. It has always been there. Before your thirst was even created, the river was ready. Before your desire arose, the fulfillment was present. And because you are standing by the river yet refusing to drink, you remain completely immature. Many people come to me from all corners of the world, carrying the heavy burden of their years, and they say to me, "Osho, I am 50, or I am 60, but I don't yet feel really mature and fully grown up. What is the matter with me?" I look into their eyes and I tell them, the matter is very simple yet very radical. You have not yet killed anybody. If you want to become truly mature, if you want to become a fully conscious, independent human being, you have to become a very, very skillful murderer. Unless you kill a few specific persons inside your consciousness, you will always remain a child, a dependent, a psychological cripple. You have to kill your parents, you have to kill your teachers, you have to kill your political leaders. They are all clamoring inside your head, sitting on the chest of your soul, and they don't allow you to become a grown-up person. They go on keeping you childish because a childish person is easy to manipulate. A childish person is obedient. A childish person can be controlled by the society. It happened once. A blessed monk was taking his final leave from Gautam Buddha. He was going far away into distant lands to spread the message of awareness, to share the fragrance of meditation. As he came forward to touch Buddha's feet in deep gratitude, Buddha looked at the assembly of his disciples and said, "Do you see this blessed monk? He has killed his mother. He has killed his father. He has killed his relatives. And he has killed his king." The other monks were completely shocked. They could not believe their ears. They looked at each other, trembling with confusion, thinking, "What is Buddha saying? Is he praising a mass murderer? Is he calling a criminal blessed?" One disciple gathered his courage, bowed down, and asked, "Sir, what do you mean? Do you mean a murderer has some great spiritual virtue?" Buddha laughed his beautiful cosmic laugh and said, "Not only that, he has even murdered himself. He has committed absolute suicide." And then Buddha sang a beautiful song to explain the mystery. You see, everybody is brought up as a child. That is your very first entry into the world, and for years you are trained by your family and your society to remain a child. Everything is ordered for you. Everything is decided for you, and you are continuously expected to obey without asking questions. This long conditioning turns you into a completely dependent being. Even when your body becomes old, even when you turn 50 or 60, your mind remains stuck at the age of 12. You are always looking for father figures. You are always looking for external authorities, for priests, for politicians, for holy books, to tell you what should be done and what should not be done. Maturity means the deep inner understanding to decide for oneself, the absolute courage to be decisive on your own accord, to stand firmly on your own feet without any psychological crutches. That is what maturity is. But it rarely happens in the world because parents spoil almost every single child, more or less. They don't do it intentionally. They do it out of their own blindness, out of their own unconsciousness. They were spoiled by their parents, and they simply repeat the same mechanical tape with you. And then there is the school, the college, the university. They are all structural factories designed to spoil your originality, to kill your spontaneity, and to force you into a predictable pattern of behavior. The society is never happy with mature people. Mature people are highly dangerous people because a mature person lives according to his own light, according to his own inner being. He does his own thing. He flows in his own direction, and he does not bother at all about what people say, what their opinions are, or what the neighbors think. He does not hanker for your social respectability. He does not chase prestige. He does not care for your plastic honors. He lives his own life at any cost. He is ready to sacrifice his wealth, his comfort, his security. But he is never ready to sacrifice his ultimate freedom. Society is terrified of such individuals. Therefore, it ensures that everybody remains fundamentally childish. It keeps the collective mental age somewhere between 7 and 14. In the First World War, when psychologists began searching for the average mental age of the soldiers in the army on a large scale, they came across a shocking discovery. The average mental age of a grown-up soldier was only 12. Your body goes on aging, but your consciousness remains locked in a pre-adolescent prison. Before you reach 14, you are completely repressed by the world, because after 14, repression becomes an uphill battle. By the time a child reaches the age of 14, if he has not been thoroughly conditioned and repressed, there is no possibility to control him ever again. Why? Because at 14, biology makes him a sexual being, and with sexuality comes a sudden surge of independent power. Before 14, a child is weak, vulnerable, suggestible, and highly open to hypnosis. You can pump any nonsense into his head. You can tell him about a localized God in heaven, about the horror of sin, about the beauty of your specific nation, and he will listen, he will believe, he will absorb it into his blood. But after 14, logic arises, doubt bubbles up, and independence asserts itself. Nature makes him capable of becoming a parent himself, giving him a separate biological and psychological identity. Priests and politicians discovered this truth thousands of years before modern psychologists even entered the world. They watched children and they realized that if you want to create a submissive slave, if you want to make a human being a lifelong dependent, you must catch him as early as possible. If you can condition his mind before the age of 7, your success is almost guaranteed. If you leave him unconditioned until 14, you will never be able to tame him. That is why all organized religions are passionately interested in children's education. They want to condition the wet clay before it hardens into a mature, independent structure. Therefore, the greatest, most sacred work for a person who really wants to become free, who wants to become conscious, who wants to become totally dehypnotized, is to unwind the mind and wash the inside clean of all parental voices. When I say you have to kill your father and mother, I am talking about the psychological impressions, the recorded tapes you carry inside your brain. Watch your behavior closely. You are about to do something spontaneous, and suddenly you hear your mother's voice echoing inside your head. Don't do it. It is wrong. You are going to eat a little extra ice cream, and immediately the internal tape plays. Stop. Enough is enough. You start feeling instantly guilty. You are going to make deep, passionate love to a woman or a man, and suddenly all your childhood teachers and priests are standing there in a long ghostly queue inside your mind, whispering, "You are committing a sin, you are falling into a trap, escape before it is too late." Even when you are in bed with your legal wife, your parents and priests are standing right there between you, freezing your joy, destroying your orgasm, turning your love into a mechanical duty. It is almost impossible to find a man or a woman who can go totally, wildly, fluidly into love, because your childhood conditioning has convinced you that pleasure is a crime, that nature is dangerous. Unless you become a fierce warrior, ready to murder all these internal ghosts, you will never know what maturity is. And that is exactly what my definition of sannyas is. A sannyasin is a person who has gathered the immense courage to drop all parental voices, to discard all external authorities, and to step into the vast, uncharted ocean of the unknown without any map. He is ready to risk everything just to be himself, fresh, clean, and unpolluted. It happened to a Western seeker named Alexander Eliot, who was studying under a wild Zen master. For months, he sat in silent meditation, practicing zazen, entering into the deeper, darker waters of his own unconscious mind. One night, he had a very strange, terrifying dream, a dream that is well known in the esoteric circles of Zen. He related his dream later, saying, "I had a dream in which Bodhidharma suddenly appeared before me. He was a floating huddle of a man, round, ghostly, with huge bulging eyes and a massive bulbous brow. Bodhidharma is painted by Zen masters in a very dangerous, nightmarish way. He did not look like that physically. Physically, he was a beautiful prince, but his spiritual presence was so shattering, so sharp, that masters painted him like a fierce murderer to indicate his capacity to cut down your ego. In the dream, Alexander Elliot began to tremble with intense fear. He could not tell if Bodhidharma was grinning at him or making an ugly grimace through his coarse, bristling whiskers. Suddenly, Bodhidharma looked deep into his soul and whispered through his thick beard, "You seem to be a grown-up man, yet you have never killed anyone. How come?" Elliot woke up from the dream perspiring, shaking, his heart pounding violently. He could not understand what this mad master meant by asking, "How come you have never killed anyone?" If you are 50 and you still feel like a child, it is simply because you have kept all your internal executioners alive. You have not killed their authority over your life. Do not waste any more time. Unwind the mind, delete the recorded tapes, and start living your life from this very moment as if you are born anew, as a blank sheet, completely fresh, without any memory of what you have been taught. True maturity will come to you instantly, and without that maturity, life is completely meaningless, a total waste. All that is beautiful, all that is divine, blossoms only in a mature consciousness. Your body is born when you come out of your mother's womb, but your soul is born only when you come out of the societal womb of conditioning. Why are people so terrified of the sublime? Why do they suppress paradise? What is so threatening about ultimate happiness? You always go around claiming that you are looking for bliss, that you want to be happy, but if you observe human beings closely, you will find that they are deeply in love with their misery. They cling to it like a treasure. They talk about happiness only because they are so miserable. But the moment happiness approaches them, they become terrified. They shut their doors. They withdraw into their dark holes of suffering. Nobody is preventing you from being happy here now. All the ingredients of paradise are present right this second. But you refuse to drop the mechanism that creates your unhappiness. It is as if a man goes to a doctor screaming that he wants health, but he tightly hugs his disease, refuses to take the medicine, throws away the healthy food, and spends his days poisoning his body while continuing to cry out for a cure. Health is not an object you can buy in the market. Health is a totally different way of living, a natural harmony with existence. Misery is also a way of living, a highly complicated, artificial construct. People come to me and say they want bliss, but they refuse to drop their jealousy. They refuse to drop their possessiveness, their anger, their continuous comparisons. If you carry the weeds of jealousy, how can the delicate rose of love ever grow in your heart? And if love does not bloom, how can you ever be happy? Happiness is your fundamental nature. It requires no special expertise, no clever strategy, no hard labor. Look at the cows grazing in the field. Look at the cats resting in the sun. Look at the birds soaring through the sky. They are all fundamentally happy without going to any church, without reading any holy book, without practicing any complicated yoga postures. The entire existence is a celebration of joy, except man. Man has become so clever, so technologically advanced, that he has perfected the art of creating misery out of nothing. To be miserable requires immense effort, hard labor, great cunningness, and lifelong expertise. It is a miracle how you manage to stay so consistently unhappy in such a beautiful, dancing universe. Why do you choose misery over happiness? Because in misery, your ego can exist beautifully. Misery feeds the ego, and happiness completely dissolves it. The ego is an artificial, non-existential entity, a mere ghost created by your mind constructs. It needs constant conflict, constant friction, constant tension to feel that it is. When you are miserable, your suffering becomes a powerful prop for your ego. You feel separate from existence. You feel like a separate island fighting a great battle against the whole world. But the moment you are genuinely happy, the ego island simply melts away into the oceanic whole. In total joy, you are not. Only the joy is. When you are lost in magnificent music, the musician disappears, the listener disappears, only the pure vibration of sound remains. When you are lost in a wild, ecstatic dance, the dancer vanishes, only the dance abides. Because you are terrified of disappearing, because you want to preserve your tiny, miserable ego at any cost, you push away the sublime experience of paradise. You are ready to live in hell as long as you can say, I am here. George Bernard Shaw said a very deep thing before he died. If I am going to be second in the queue in heaven, I would rather choose to be the first man in hell. At least in hell, my individuality, my ego will be respected and recognized. And this is not just Shaw's voice, this is the unconscious voice of the entire human race. You repress the sublime because with the sublime you are gone forever. Human consciousness has three distinct layers. The conscious mind, which is just a tiny, superficial island. The vast oceanic unconscious mind below it, and the equally infinite superconscious mind above it. Your small ego conscious mind is tightly sandwiched between these two vast oceans. If you fall below into the natural unconscious through deep love, through wild sex, through absolute relaxation, your ego island melts. That is why moralists and Puritans are terrified of sex and love. They are afraid of losing control, afraid of melting even for a single second. But when you dive into the unconscious, you disappear only temporarily. Within a few moments, you are back on your safe island, unchanged. But when you move upwards into the superconscious, towards the sublime, towards meditation, prayer, and ultimate satori, you melt completely and you never return. It is an absolute one-way journey. As the ancient Buddhist mantra says, gone, gone, gone forever, gone to the ultimate shore, never to come back. This is the great death, and that is why you repress the sublime with all your strength. You prefer your cozy, familiar misery because it keeps you safe, it keeps you defined, it keeps you inside your small protective shell. You have turned your entire life into a conspiracy of suffering. You talk more about your illnesses, your surgeries, your miseries than you ever talk about your joy. Have you noticed this? When two people meet, they immediately start boring each other with the long dramatic histories of their diseases. It happened. A woman went to a famous doctor and said, "Doctor, don't waste time asking me what is wrong with me. Just perform an operation immediately." The doctor was shocked. He said, "Are you mad? An operation for what? What needs to be removed?" The woman sighed and said, "Anything will do. Remove my tonsils, remove my appendix, remove whatever you can find. I am simply tired of sitting with my friends and listening to their long, beautiful stories about their operations. Whenever we gather, every woman has a spectacular story to tell about her appendix or her gallbladder, and I have nothing to say. I feel completely left out, unimportant. Please give me an operation so I also have something magnificent to brag about." You laugh, but this is exactly what you are doing with your misery. You look into a mirror and you magnify your suffering. You exaggerate your pain because the bigger your enemy is, the greater a warrior you appear to be. If you have an ordinary headache, it is nothing to brag about. But if you claim you have a rare, incurable cancer, suddenly your ego soars high. You are fighting a monumental war against destiny itself. Stop this self-destructive mechanism immediately. Stop feeding your misery with your attention. Attention is the ultimate food, the most subtle nourishment in existence. Whatever you pay attention to begins to grow, to expand, to become powerful. Modern scientific experiments have proved that even plants grow double their size if the gardener pays them loving attention, if he caresses them, talks to them, sings to them. If you neglect a plant, even if you give it water and manure, it will not grow as fast because it lacks the vital food of attention. Children grow healthy and beautiful not because of the expensive vitamins the nurse gives them, but because of the warm, unconditional attention of the mother. When a mother hugs her child, when she looks into his eyes with absolute love, the child feels significant, he feels needed, he realizes that his presence brings meaning into the world. The need to be needed is the deepest psychological hunger of a human being. When a woman falls in love with you, you change overnight. Your walk becomes a dance. Your eyes shine with a new light. You become graceful, clean, and poetic. Why? Because those two eyes are paying attention to you, turning you into a significant entity in this vast universe. Every single human being becomes a magnificent poet the moment he falls in love, because love releases the frozen energy of his soul. So remember this secret: never pay attention to the negative. Never talk about your misery, never magnify your pain, never feed your suffering with your consciousness. Treat your misery with absolute indifference. Indifference is the ultimate poison. Whatever you are indifferent to simply starves and dies. Focus your entire energy on the small, beautiful moments of joy. When you are drinking your morning tea, focus your whole soul into that taste. Let that moment become your entire universe. When you are walking in the garden, look at the green leaves with absolute intensity. Let your heart overflow with gratitude. Feed your joy, nourish your happiness, and you will be surprised to see that paradise is not a geographical place hidden beyond the clouds. Paradise is a psychological state, a beautiful way of living that is available to you right here now. Many seekers hesitate for years before taking a step into this wild ocean of awareness. They come to me and say, "Osho, I want to take sannyas. I want to jump into meditation, but I have been trained from my very childhood to take every single step very carefully, with great calculation. Because of this habit, I am stuck in a state of continuous hesitation. What should I do?" I tell them, if you go on hesitating, you will miss everything that is beautiful, everything that is divine in life. The window of opportunity opens only for a rare split second. And if you are not ready to take a blind jump when the wind is blowing, the window closes, and it may remain shut for many lives. A calculating mind is a dead mind, a mind that accumulates logic while life slips away. It is said about the great German philosopher Immanuel Kant, a man who lived entirely in his head, completely organized, completely logical, that a beautiful woman from his neighborhood came to him one day and openly asked him to marry her. Kant looked at her, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Let me think about it." He went back to his study and thought about it for 3 long years. He meditated over all the logical pros and cons of marriage. If you open his preserved diary today, you will find pages filled with 300 reasons for marriage and 300 reasons against marriage. Finally, after 3 years, he found one extra reason in favor of marriage, a small syllogistic point, so he decided to accept her proposal. He walked down to the woman's house, knocked on the door, and her father opened it. Kant looked at him and said, "I have finally decided to marry your daughter." The father looked at him with great pity and laughed, saying, "Young man, you came a little too late. She is already married, and she already has a child. You missed the opportunity while you were busy writing your equations." Kant remained a bachelor for his entire life because no other woman ever asked him again, and he himself was too careful, too hesitant to ever take the initiative. A newly married society girl was determined to prove to her husband what an incredible, accomplished cook she was. On the servant's day off, she decided to roast a whole chicken for his dinner. She plucked the fowl carefully, arranged it neatly in a heavy pot, and placed it inside the oven. 2 hours later, as she was sitting in the living room, she heard a loud, violent banging coming from inside the oven. She ran to investigate, opened the oven door, and to her absolute horror, the chicken stuck its head out and cried piteously, "Lady, for heaven's sake, either give me back my feathers or turn on the gas. I am freezing to death inside this cold oven of yours. You have been sitting inside the cold oven of your careful, calculating mind for 50 years, freezing to death. Either do something or die. Have some mercy on your own living soul. Why are you so terrified of taking a risk? Life belongs only to those who are courageous, to those who are gamblers, to those who are ready to risk the known for the sake of the unknown. I am not telling you to be blind. Keep your eyes wide open, be alert, be deeply careful in the sense of being aware. But do not confuse awareness with cowardice. Do not confuse calculation with clarity. If you sit silently on the bank, refusing to jump into the current because you are too careful, you will never reach the ocean. You will turn into a stagnant, dirty pond, and your water will slowly evaporate into nothingness. Be river-like. Flow down from the safe mountains of your ego, groove through the dangerous valleys, move into the uncharted territories of existence without any map, without any guide. Grope your way through the darkness, and one day you will naturally hit the infinite ocean of bliss. All rivers reach the ocean. You just have to drop your hesitation. What have you got to lose anyway? Why are you trembling with such fear? You are like a completely naked man who stands on the river bank, refusing to take a bath because he is terrified of where he will dry his clothes. You have no clothes, you have no wealth, you have no bliss. You carry nothing but a heavy bag of miseries and social anxieties. Why are you so attached to your chains? If you take the jump into sannyas, if you plunge into the fire of meditation, you have nothing to lose but your heavy illusions, your artificial masks, your painful prisons. I cannot guarantee you anything. I cannot sign a promissory note for your enlightenment. Sannyas is an absolute gamble, a wild adventure into the oceanic whole. I simply open the door to the wild, to the organic, to the orgasmic reality of existence. While the door is open, while the master is present, while the wind is blowing, take the jump. Do not stand there calculating until it is too late. This deep understanding of your inner fire is exactly what allows you to shift from a crawling worm into a soaring butterfly. It is the realization that your energy belongs to the cosmic whole, an echo of the ultimate realization we explore in our guide, the Hidden Energy Protocol. Reclaim your God mode, which you can find right below in the descriptions. This moment is all there is, and if you can look into it with absolute clarity, without any words, without any thoughts, you will find that the observer and the observed are not separate. You are neither life nor death. You are the eternal, unchanging witness that abides through it all. This witness is not an accumulation of knowledge. It is an emptiness that is simultaneously a fullness. When you look within, the first thing you encounter is a vast vacuum, and it is precisely this vacuum that frightens the human mind. The mind cannot tolerate emptiness. It wants to be occupied. It wants to be filled with thoughts, desires, projections, and anxieties. This frantic movement to escape your inner emptiness is what constitutes the entire structure of the world, what we call samsara. You build magnificent sand castles on the river bank, and you become so completely absorbed in defending them that you forget the river of life flowing right beside you. Look at the children playing by the water. They collect the wet dust. They shape it into towers. They build walls. And each child proclaims with absolute certainty, "This one is mine." They keep their creations separate, and they will not tolerate any infringement upon their territory. They are ready to scream, to scratch, to pull each other's hair if a single boundary line is crossed. The sandcastle has become their entire reality, the center of their universe. And then, when the sun begins to dip below the horizon and the evening shadows lengthen, the voice of the mother calls them back home for dinner. In a single moment, the entire context changes. The darkness is approaching, the game is over, and they must return. Suddenly, no one cares what becomes of his castle. The intense possessiveness that was ready to spark a war vanishes into thin air. One child stamps on his own tower, flattening it back into wet dust. Another child pushes his wall over with both hands, laughing as it crumbles into anonymous sand. They don't look back with regret. They don't shed a single tear for their destroyed empires. They simply turn around, completely empty-handed, and run back to their homes. This is the ultimate paradox of human life. You spend your entire existence building grand, sophisticated sandcastles. You call them your wealth, your political empires, your family names, your academic achievements, your national borders. You guard these illusions with absolute madness. You are ready to drop nuclear bombs, to slaughter millions of fellow human beings just to protect a line drawn in the dust. You take your property, your position, your reputation with a heavy life and death seriousness. But I tell you, the evening is coming for you too. The darkness of death is approaching every single second, and the voice of the whole will eventually call you back to your true home. In that final moment, when you stand face to face with the ultimate reality, you will realize that all your grand achievements were nothing but temporary piles of dust on the banks of a flowing river. Not a single coin, not a single title, not a single mask can be carried across that threshold. You came into this world completely naked and empty-handed, and you will leave it in exactly the same way. An intelligent person does not wait for the physical breath to stop to realize this truth. He experiences the great death while he is completely alive. In the very middle of the game, while he is active in the marketplace, he looks at his sandcastle and clearly recognizes its true nature. He does not stop playing, he does not run away to a monastery, but he drops his seriousness completely. He treats life as a beautiful play, a cosmic game. If the sandcastle stands, beautiful. If someone steps on it and destroys it, he laughs. He carries no burden of possessiveness because he knows that when the darkness falls, he will have to leave it all behind anyway. The noise of your mind is entirely created by your seriousness, by your desperate, frantic effort to turn temporary illusions into permanent realities. You want your youth to stay forever. You want your love affairs to remain unchanging. You want your wealth to be eternal. This constant struggle to freeze the moving, fluid river of life into a static monument creates a tremendous friction within your soul. It turns you into a chronic neurotic. Look at the mechanics of your desires. What happens when a new desire arises in your consciousness? It creates a tremendous thrill, an adventure, a heavy intoxication. You feel a sudden kick of energy. You believe that once you possess that specific car, once you live in that magnificent house, once you win that beautiful woman, your life will be completely fulfilled. You will find eternal peace. You invest all your energy, your days and nights, your very soul into chasing that goal. And then the car is parked in your garage. The house belongs to you. The woman is in your bed. Suddenly, a strange phenomenon happens. All the excitement vanishes instantly. The object of your desire becomes flat, ordinary, and completely meaningless. Why? Because the heart of human desire is like a bottomless begging bowl. The moment you drop something into it, it dematerializes, it disappears, and the bowl remains as empty as before. There is a magnificent Sufi parable about a great emperor who was stepping out of his grand palace for a morning walk. At the palace gate, he encountered a beggar holding a small begging bowl. The emperor, feeling rich and powerful, looked at the beggar and said, "What do you want from me? Tell me your desire, and I shall fulfill it immediately." The beggar laughed a beautiful, mocking laugh and said, "Your Majesty, you are speaking as if you have the capacity to fulfill my desire. Think twice before you make such a bold promise." The emperor was deeply offended. His royal ego was challenged. He shouted, "I am the ruler of a vast empire. I have infinite gold, treasures, and jewels. What can a miserable beggar like you possibly desire that I cannot give you? Tell me your wish." The beggar looked into the emperor's eyes and said, "It is a very simple wish. You see this small begging bowl in my hand? Can you fill it completely with something? Anything will do. I don't demand diamonds or pearls. Just fill it so it is no longer empty." The emperor laughed and called his chief vizier. He ordered, "Fill this madman's bowl with gold coins from the treasury." The vizier brought a large bag of gold and poured it into the bowl. But the moment the coins touched the bottom, they simply disappeared. The bowl remained completely empty. The vizier brought more gold, more silver, more jewels, pouring them continuously into the small bowl, but everything dematerialized within a split second. The rumor spread like wildfire through the capital, and thousands of people gathered around the palace gates to watch this incredible phenomenon. The prestige of the emperor was at stake. He cried out, "Even if my entire kingdom is lost, even if all my treasuries are emptied, I cannot accept defeat from a beggar. Pour everything into the bowl." By the time the sun was setting, the emperor's entire wealth had disappeared into that bottomless void. The treasuries were completely empty, the kingdom was bankrupt, and the small begging bowl was still as empty as it was in the morning. Finally, the emperor realized his utter helplessness. He fell at the feet of the beggar, wept bitterly, and said, "Sir, please forgive my arrogance. I accept my defeat. I have nothing left to give you. But before you walk away, please fulfill my curiosity. What is the secret of this magical begging bowl? Of what material is it made?" The beggar looked down at the weeping emperor with immense compassion and said, "Look into my eyes, my child. There is no magic in this bowl. It is simply made out of the human heart. This is the exact nature of human desire. You can pour entire worlds into it. You can pour all the wealth, all the power, all the prestige of the universe into it, and it will instantly dematerialize, leaving you as hollow, as empty, and as begging as before. This is the realization that turns a man inward. This is the turning point that Buddha calls paravritti, a total conversion, a 180-degree shift of consciousness. As long as you believe that the next desire will fulfill you, you remain a beggar, running outward into the world of 1,001 things. But the moment you clearly see that every single desire is destined to fail, that frustration is built into the very structure of desire itself, your running stops. You halt. And that halting is what meditation is all about. When your outward running stops, your energy naturally turns backward, flooding your own inner center. For the first time, you confront your inner nothingness, not with fear, but with absolute joy. You discover that your emptiness is not a negative absence. It is a luminous, creative space. It is what Zen calls shunyata, the magnificent void out of which the entire creation arises, and into which everything eventually dissolves. It is the unmoving axle upon which the wheel of existence revolves. Look at your life. Why are you so terrified of being alone? Why do you constantly need the television on, the radio playing, or a book to read? Why are you always seeking company, gossiping in the marketplace, or scrolling through your technological gadgets? You are running away from your own nothingness. You are terrified that if the noise stops, if the distractions disappear, you will have to look inside and face the yawning vacuum of your own non-being. To escape this vacuum, you create an artificial entity called the ego. The ego is nothing but a bundle of your achievements, your labels, your memories, and your desires. It exists only through friction, through conflict, through struggle. The ego needs to be constantly fed with praise, with power, with competition. If you are fasting, your ego feels strong because you are a warrior fighting against your own body. If you are a great saint, your ego feels immense because you look down upon the ordinary people as sinners. The ego can live beautifully with your miseries and your struggles, but the moment you drop into a state of total relaxation, the ego simply melts away. And that is precisely why people are so deeply afraid of true happiness. They talk about bliss, they search for it in books and scriptures, but the moment the sublime breeze of paradise knocks on their door, they shut their windows tightly. They choose to cling to their familiar, cozy misery because misery supports the ego while happiness destroys it completely. In deep joy, you are not. Only the joy is. The dancer vanishes into the dance. The musician melts into the melody, and the witness dissolves into the grand phenomenon of existence. Zen is the path of absolute dehypnosis. It is the realization that all your dualities, success and failure, life and death, good and bad, holiness and sin, are nothing but mind constructs, artificial games played on the surface of your consciousness. They have no absolute reality. When you drop all your belief systems, all your moral judgments, your vision becomes completely clear, transparent, and mirror-like. You no longer choose. You simply respond out of your immediate clarity. This clarity brings total choicelessness. When you can see clearly that there is an open door and a solid brick wall, you don't stand there wavering, arguing with yourself whether you should go through the wall or through the door. You don't need a moral commandment saying, "Thou shalt not walk through the solid wall." You simply walk through the open door because your eyes can see. Only blind people need guidelines. Only blind people need a priest to hold their hands and tell them where to step. Zen wants to cure your blindness, to give you your eyesight back so that you can become a light unto yourself. This was the final message of Gautam Buddha before he closed his eyes for the last time. His disciples were weeping, crying, beating their chests, feeling completely lost in the darkness. They wailed, "Master, you are leaving us. Who will guide us now? Who will show us the way through the dark valleys of life?" Buddha looked at them with immense tenderness and uttered his ultimate words, "Apo Dipo Bhava." Be a light unto yourself. Do not look for external crutches. Do not rely on dead scriptures. Do not follow shadows. Dive deep into your own inner nothingness. Find that silent witness at the center of the cyclone and let that clarity guide your every step. When you become a light unto yourself, your ordinary life transforms into a magnificent dance. Everything remains exactly as it was on the surface. You still carry water from the well. You still chop wood for the fire. You still cook your daily food. You still clear the table after a meal. But the context is completely altered. You do everything with such absolute serenity, with such deep silence, with such incredible grace that every ordinary gesture becomes a sacred prayer, an offering to the cosmic whole. You move through the world empty-handed, non-possessive, non-ambitious, completely settled in the precious here now. You stop worrying about what will happen after death, because you have already touched that timeless, deathless space within your own soul. You realize that you were there before your parents were even born, and you will be there long after your body returns to the dust. You are neither the changing body nor the noisy mind. You are the eternal, unchanging host who watches the clouds of life and death pass across the sky of your consciousness. Look at the beauty of this moment. The sun is shining, the trees are swaying, the birds are singing, and the river of life is flowing beautifully all around you. Why wait for tomorrow? Why postpone your awakening for another life? Drop your sand castles right now. Let go of your heavy seriousness, your rigid moral masks, your endless calculations. Step out of the cold oven of your mind, spread your magnificent wings, and fly into the vast open sky of ultimate freedom. You are already a Buddha. You are already a God. You just have to open your eyes and recognize the divine presence that abides within your own heart. Reclaiming your true nature is the path toward accessing the deep, untamed ocean of your consciousness, a spiritual awakening detailed beautifully in the pages of our e-book, The Hidden Energy Protocol. Reclaim your God mode, which you can find right below in the description.